used to work the night shift at a small gas station just off a quiet stretch of highway. And when I say used to, I mean I haven't worked a single overnight shift since what happened that night. The place barely got any business after midnight, and most of my time was spent restocking shelves, wiping counters, and occasionally ringing up a trucker passing through. But after around 2 in the morning, even that stopped, and it would go completely silent. That night, sometime around 2:30, I stepped outside for a bit because it was freezing, and I remember standing in an empty parking lot with nothing but the pumps, the road, and a dark line of trees beyond a flickering neon sign, and everything felt strangely still. I was about to head back inside when I noticed movement near one of the pumps and saw a man standing there, and I don't know how I hadn't seen him earlier because he was just there, wearing a dark red hoodie with the hood up and his hands in his pockets, with no car nearby and no sound at all, just standing slightly turned toward the store like he was watching me. At first I thought maybe he was waiting for someone, but something about him felt off because he wasn't completely still and kept shifting like he was pacing in small circles. So I went back inside while keeping an eye on him through the glass. And after a few minutes, he started walking toward the door, slowly at first, and then suddenly faster, like he'd made up his mind. He came inside and walked straight to the counter, but didn't say anything right away and just stared at me in a way that felt like he was studying me. And then, in a rushed and almost rehearsed tone, he told me his car had broken down just past the pumps and that he needed a jump or maybe some gas to get to the next town, but the story felt off, like he wasn't even trying to make it believable. I told him I could call a tow truck, but he immediately shut that down and said no too quickly, insisting that he just needed a flashlight and maybe some help checking under the hood. And that's when I knew something wasn't right, but I still asked where his car was, and he pointed toward the security monitor behind me. So I turned to look and saw that there actually was a car out there. And for a moment, I thought maybe I was wrong and he really did need help. But then it hit me that I had just been outside and there was no car there before. I looked closer at the screen and noticed a slight movement near the back of the car where someone was crouching just barely in view. And that's when a cold wave of dread hit me. So I forced myself to stay calm and told him I would help, but that I needed to grab my phone from the back first. And the moment I stepped out of his direct line of sight, I slammed my hand onto the panic button under the counter and the alarm blasted through the store. I expected him to panic or get aggressive, but instead he completely relaxed and all of his nervous energy disappeared, and he stood there still before slowly smiling in a way that didn't feel normal at all, like he wasn't worried or rushed, and like this whole situation didn't matter to him. And before I could react, he suddenly turned and ran out of the store. I rushed to the monitors just in time to see him and another person running, not toward the car, but straight into the trees behind the station, disappearing into the darkness. And when the police arrived, everything was exactly how I had seen it, with the car still sitting there, with the engine off and the lights off and no one inside. But then one of the officers noticed that the front passenger door was slightly open, which meant there had been someone else inside the entire time. And there were actually 3 people involved. Later on, the car turned out to be stolen from over 100 miles away, and no one ever came forward, and no suspects were found, and no trace of the men was ever discovered, and it was just left as an abandoned vehicle with no explanation. And even now, months later, I still think about how different things could have been if I had walked outside with him, and I know for sure that I will never work another night shift again. I was 26 and working the night shift at a large distribution warehouse outside Columbus. The building operated 24 hours a day, but after midnight, only a handful of employees remained. Most of us worked in separate sections, and it wasn't unusual to go long periods without seeing another person. The warehouse itself was enormous. Some aisles seemed to stretch forever, and at night, the place felt much bigger than it did during the day. One night around 1:40 a.m., I noticed a man standing at the end of an aisle while I was scanning inventory. I assumed he was another employee until I realized he wasn't wearing a reflective vest, which was mandatory on the warehouse floor. I looked away for a second to scan a box, and when I looked back, he was gone. I remember staring at the spot for a few moments, expecting him to reappear, but he never did. A few nights later, I saw him again in a completely different section of the warehouse. He was standing completely still between two shelving units, looking in my direction. When I started walking toward him, he stepped behind a shelf and disappeared. I checked the area immediately, but there was nowhere he could have gone. The aisles nearby were empty, and there weren't any doors or exits close enough for someone to vanish that quickly. After that, I started noticing him more often. Sometimes it would be weeks apart, and sometimes only days. The strange thing was that every time I spotted him, he already seemed to be looking directly at me. Eventually, other employees started reporting the same thing. At first, I felt relieved because it meant I wasn't imagining it. Security reviewed the camera footage and actually found him on several recordings. The videos showed the same man appearing in different areas of the warehouse during overnight hours. Sometimes he would be visible for only a few seconds before walking out of frame. The strange part was that there were no access card records showing how he entered the building. Management assumed he was a trespasser and organized several searches of the property, but nothing was ever found. Then one night, a forklift operator reported seeing the man enter an unused storage room at the far end of the warehouse. Security responded immediately. 3 guards entered through the only door while another remained outside. According to all of them, there was no possible way for anyone to leave without being seen. Yet when they searched the room, it was completely empty. Security later reviewed the footage, and it clearly showed the man walking into the room. The door never opened again after that. Even some of the guards admitted they couldn't explain what they had seen. Management eventually contacted police, and a possible explanation emerged. Years earlier, a former employee had been fired for repeatedly entering restricted areas of the warehouse. Everyone assumed he was somehow sneaking back into the building. The theory seemed reasonable until security discovered that the former employee had died in a car accident almost a year before the sightings began. I transferred to a daytime position not long after, but I still keep in touch with a few people who work there. Every now and then, someone reports seeing a man standing motionless at the end of an aisle during the overnight shift. Maybe there's a logical explanation for what happened, but I've never heard one. What still bothers me is that every time I saw him, he never looked surprised to see me. It always felt like he had been standing there, waiting for me to notice him. Back in 2022, I was 20 years old and living in Orlando, Florida. At the time, I was attending community college and working the night audit shift at a small hotel just outside the main tourist areas. The job was usually quiet. Most nights involved checking in late guests, answering phone calls, and preparing reports for the morning staff. I had been working there for about 5 months when something happened that I still can't explain. One thing worth mentioning is that Room 312 had been out of service for several months due to severe water damage caused by a burst pipe. The room had been removed from the reservation system, locked, and left unused until management decided what to do with it. One night around 2:30 a.m., I received a call from a guest staying in room 311. He sounded annoyed and said the person next door had been making noise for nearly an hour. I apologized and checked the reservation system, only to realize the room beside him was 312, which wasn't occupied. Assuming he had the wrong room number, I thanked him and ended the call. About an hour later, he called again, sounding even more frustrated. This time he described hearing footsteps, occasional thumps, and what sounded like furniture being moved. I went upstairs to investigate but found nothing. The hallway was silent. Room 312 was locked, and there was no sign anyone had been inside. A few days later, another guest checked into room 311 and called around 3 a.m. with a similar complaint. He claimed he could hear someone coughing through the wall and occasionally opening and closing a door. Over the next few weeks, different guests staying in room 311 continued reporting noises coming from room 312. Some described footsteps pacing back and forth, while others mentioned hearing objects being dragged or dropped. At first I thought it was a coincidence, but eventually I started feeling uneasy because every complaint involved the same supposedly empty room. Then one night around 2:45 a.m., another guest from room 311 called and complained that someone next door had been walking around for over an hour. This time, I decided to investigate immediately. As I walked down the third-floor hallway, I noticed a faint strip of light underneath the door of room 312. I stopped because I knew that room wasn't supposed to be occupied. Before I could get closer, the light suddenly disappeared. I went downstairs, grabbed the master key, and returned. When I unlocked the room and stepped inside, it became obvious someone had been living there. There was a half-empty water bottle on the nightstand, a fast food bag near the bed, and a blanket folded in the corner. Inside the closet, I found a backpack containing clothes, canned food, and other belongings. I immediately left the room, locked it, and called the police. While waiting for officers to arrive, I reviewed security footage from previous nights and eventually spotted a man entering through a side emergency exit shortly after midnight. He seemed familiar with the property and carefully avoided several cameras. Every night he made his way toward the third floor and remained there until just before sunrise. When police arrived, they searched the property and eventually found the man hiding inside an unused maintenance area connected to the hotel. It turned out he had worked construction on the building years earlier and knew access routes that most employees weren't aware of. After losing his job and apartment, he had apparently been sneaking into room 312 for months. Without anyone noticing, everyone assumed the mystery was solved. The complaints stopped, management changed several locks around the building, and the room was secured. About a week later, however, I was working another overnight shift when the front desk phone rang at around 2:50 a.m. The caller was staying in room 311. The moment I answered, he sounded irritated and asked if I could tell the person next door to stop walking around because he was trying to sleep. I immediately opened the reservation system and felt a chill run through me. Room 312 was still vacant, locked, and under management supervision. More importantly, the man police had arrested was already sitting in county jail. I asked the guest which room he was talking about, and without hesitation he replied, 312. After the call ended, I checked the cameras, walked the hallway, and even unlocked the room myself. It was completely empty. No lights, no sounds, and no signs that anyone had entered. I finished my shift that morning, but that call never left my mind. The logical explanation had already been found and arrested. Yet somehow another guest reported hearing the exact same noises coming from the exact same room after the man was gone. To this day, I have no idea what that guest heard that night, and honestly, I don't think I want to know.